a Kung Fu Cowboy, tennis shoes on my feet. I'm a Kung Fu Cowboy, hamburgers to eat. I'm a Kung Fu Cowboy.
All right, I'm trying to give you a summary of American Zen. I'm trying to get you up to the present because my present has a lot to do with the past. So if you understand the past, it'll make a lot more sense when I refer to things. Okay, American Zen started in 1991. I didn't realize it officially until 1992. I even had my bass player, my protege, Sam Persons. He was my roadie. I've got some pictures of him back in the 80s when I was performing the rock opera. He was my roadie because I had a lot of equipment. I told you about those big amp stacks. It's best to have two people to carry that. You can't even do it with one person upstairs and stuff. But anyway, he was my roadie, and my deal was I'd either pay him $25 an hour to do a gig, just like I'd pay for somebody to perform. I said I like 50, but 25 is really, I think, the most I paid. I might have paid some people. Well, I don't know. I have to go back and look. But anyway, the point being is, Sam Persons was my roadie, and so I got to where I was trading him bass lessons for being my roadie. And so that became it. So I trained him to be bass, and then he became a professional bassist, and he toured, and then had drug problems, and then, in fact, he was working for Great White, and so, of course, he had a severe drug problem from working with those guys, and he decided to come to Utah to stay with me so he could dry out. He actually crashed at least one time on the way there, on the way to my place, being all jacked up. But anyway, and trying to get off drugs. So he stayed with me for like a week or so, and I dried him out, and he recorded on my American Zen album. And but unfortunately, I ended up recording over his part. He's not actually on there now. I was a little disappointed with him. Like I said, even though he's my kind of a disciple, but without me, he wouldn't be a bass player. Let's put it that way. So he's anyway. He never really took. He started to take after me a little bit in my style because he'd play my songs in kind of the way I'd put them, but. He was more into the Judas Priest stuff and the stuff that where on bass you just go, and that was when his own band was that he formed, and then he kind of played in one anyway. So how'd I get to him? So anyway, because he came up when I was in Utah, and I thought, okay, he's gonna, maybe I can use him as a bass player, but no, when he came and then he couldn't quite cut it, and I had to replace him. I thought, well, I guess I'm the bass player in American Zen, and I wanted to be just a guitar player and the singer-songwriter, flutist. But then the drummer, my drummer, who I'd lived with for many years, Bruce Candelaria, came up, and he listened to what I'd already done on the first album, the first American Zen, Level 1 equals Peace of Mind, and he listened to the album, and he goes, no, Rich, I can't be your drummer. And I go, why not? He goes, this is great. He goes, I couldn't do what you did. I go, you got to be kidding. You're a much better drummer than I am. And I was using a special kind of drum machine, a real advanced one. I've actually got two of them now. Somebody gave me a second one, but I'm not using it anymore. They're outdated, but it's really cool. It was the best at the time. They used them on the Van Halen albums in the early 80s, whatever they were. Real nice drum machine. Big, huge thing. Anyway, he said, no, what you did was perfect for the album. And anyway, it was a weird compliment, but he's a great drummer. I would have much rather had him than me. So now my bass players abandoned me, my drummers abandoned me, and my guitar players, well, that's a whole story in itself of all the things I went through with my drum players, my guitar players. Yikes. Got lots of stories about that. But finding a guitar player without a drug addiction. Yeah. There was one. He was a Newfoundlander. I can't remember his name. Believe it or not, I thought that was so cool because I was exiled to Newfoundland, remember? So I've always had a certain kind of camaraderie. So I wanted to help him out. But his wife was a real BITC something. And she didn't want him to be in our band because we weren't making any money. He was basically rehearsing and performing for free, and I ended up hiring session players and having to pay them $25. In fact, I took out a loan. I actually took out a loan against my car for like $1,200, $2,000 or $1,200. I'm thinking $1,200, so I could pay session fees for players for 1 year, and still didn't pan out, unfortunately, because I never had a manager. Nobody was selling me. I was performing great. We did some great shows, but nobody knew. At least nobody knew that could do something for me. Okay, so anyway, where were we? I'm in American Zen story. We're beginning in 1991. Well, I kind of like this whole thing kind of gelled into my being. Well, if I'm going to be American Zen, I came up with this spiritual journey that American Zen would do 8 levels of spirit. I like the number 8. It's a very Buddhist number. You lay it sideways, it's infinity. But anyway, I pictured the whole thing and I mapped it out. And you can see all these things. I created all these graphs and charts of what this band was going to accomplish. So that's kind of really exciting or interesting, because then there's what really happened. I never would have imagined that I would have ended up gone from the Buddhism, because I knew that Buddhism, American Zen, because I was already a Shaolin Kung Fu master and starting my own schools. But so Shaolin Buddhism, which was the original Zen Buddhism, not the Buddhism from Japan, which they mixed Christianity and a bunch of mumbo jumbo in with, but the original Zen, which is from China at the Shaolin temples. Shaolin Kung Fu and Shaolin Zen Buddhism were actually created by the same guy, Bodhidharma, in 600 AD. So anyway, I laid out all these 8 levels, the 8th level being nirvana, whatever that is, because it's a concept. I wasn't claiming, even if I had been there, I was willing to kind of like, what are all the steps to it? So I studied all the books and I created this graph of how I was going to do it. Well, it ended up being that levels 5 and 6 were me going to the Pine Ridge Reservation and becoming a pipe carrier and doing my vision quest. And that journey was part of my spiritual growth, and an amazing spiritual growth. I had never been able to make contact with another reality, ghosts, angels, God, until I became a pipe carrier. And then voices, images, all kinds of things. And no acid, no flashbacks. My flashbacks stopped in the late 70s. They only lasted less than 10 years. It was really disappointing. You can always tell a flashback, because when you're on acid and you do this, it's called strobing. It goes like a strobe light when you do this. That's how you always know when you're on acid and you're starting to feel like, am I coming on? You go like this, oh yeah, I'm on acid. Oh, you'd see the flash of the image. That's part of being on the old LSD 25. That's how you could always tell. So anyway, the flashback stopped by 1980. Haven't had a flashback since. Well, of course, I don't go on to get too sidetracked here, but the Scientologists, I worked with them for about a year and a half. They wanted me to be in Scientology for a whole bunch of reasons we'll get into later. But when they found out I'd done LSD, they go, you got to do this purification thing where we give you all this immense quantities of vitamin A, which flushes out your system. And I said, well, gosh, is there a possibility I have LSD in my system? So they go, oh, yes, you definitely still got some of that LSD in your system. And I go, and you're going to be able to flush it out with this vitamin A? And they go, yeah, it'll clean everything out. But if you don't do this, you'll have that LSD. It's never going to leave. So I thought about it, and I go, okay, I'm not going to do it. They go, what? And I go, well, I am who I am. And perhaps LSD is part of what made me who I am. So I don't have any reason or desire to remove that part of who I am from who I am. So no, I don't want to lose my LSD. They looked at me like I was like nuts, crazy. I mean, several people, because this happened over that period for some months. They kept trying to do it, and I said, no, I don't want to. I don't want to lose my LSD. I thought that was nuts. And the other thing they said was, nobody's going to take you serious. You're homeless. This was back in 2014 and 15, maybe 16. During the, it was at least a year and a half I was involved with them, and they said, nobody's going to take you serious if you're homeless. And they were trying to get me set up with I won't get all the details right now, but they were trying to help me end my homelessness a little bit, but they weren't offering me anything that I really wanted to do or was a career choice for me. They were just trying to give me jobs helping kids in schools and stuff, their little they're doing things, services for them. And they'd give me some money. And I don't know, that would have been enough to get a place. I think they were offering me $15 an hour, $12. But anyway, whatever it was, because they only make $2 an hour or something like that, the people who actually are in Scientology. But without spending too much time on that topic, the one last thing I wanted to point out was I said, you can't, well, anyway, forget the arguments. I came up with this slogan. I don't like slogans, but this thing that kind of summarized. I said, I would rather be homeless with my dreams than be dreamless in a home. And once again, between my wanting to keep my LSD and protecting my homelessness from selling out, they just couldn't make sense of me. They haven't totally given up, but they've called me, and I stay friendly with me. They still send me the literature. They've stopped calling me, fortunately. Yeah, actually, when I got off the streets, they knew, because they monitor everybody on the web. And they knew when I got into the home. And a really nice lady who I actually like and respected. I think her name was Jean. Jeannie or Jean. And shout out to Jean. She's just a wonderful lady who works for them. Scientologists, there's some really nice people in there. And the most beautiful women in the world are Scientologists. But a lot of them are just top-notch gorgeous. Seriously. We can get to those stories another time, like I said. But anyway, the Scientologists tried to get me in. But how did that get into our American Zen journey? Okay, so let's go back to American Zen. So they were right at the end of my journey. In fact, they came right after the end of American Zen. So let's see if I can summarize. I only got a few minutes left. Okay, so it starts when I moved to LA. So the very first album is level 1. And I decided that, remember, we're talking about 8 levels. The first level is just being a human and having a family. You reproduce, you have children, you have vacations, maybe you can get a boat, and you die. Okay, that's level 1. That's peace of mind. And that's what 60% of the human population would probably be satisfied with. At least 60% would just be happy to have a happy family and a successful marriage and have their own vacation and their own time off and eat good food and go to restaurants and go to movies, drink beer and watch football games. They're happy as can be. That's level 1. Level 2 now is what happened after I'd been there in Utah for a year, and the Mormons gave up on me. They started battling me. First, they tried to indoctrinate me or get me to join, and I said no. So then they started battling me. And so then the second level, it was very much inspired by them, but it's called Christ Killer. But basically, the whole idea of the second layer is it's religions. Once you join a religion, you now have a new kind of mental evolution, because now you're imagining heaven, you're imagining angels, you're imagining God, you're imagining living again in another life or whatever it is. Dogs don't do that. Camels don't do that. I don't even think apes do that. That's only humans. So the human experience is level 1, is just to have a family. The second one is to add spirituality to it. So that's another level of mental development. And that's the Christ Killer, because the problem is once you join a religion, it's like a football team. Everybody else is your enemy. They're wrong and you're right. You want to beat the snot out of them. And that's the religious thing. That's why I call it Christ Killer, because they're even willing to kill Christ, to somehow. It's about sacrificing and animals and people and anyway, but that's the second level. It can raise you up a little bit, but then it actually tears you down because it makes you a destroyer and prejudiced. And anyway, but that's the second level of human development. That's Christ Killer. So the American Zen level 2 equals Christ Killer is all my stories about me interacting with the Mormons and their own life. And I actually kind of spelled out their life and how they were happy. Land of mediocrity and quiet army and things like that are kind of like, I knew them very well. They were playing in my band. I had them as musicians. I had them as neighbors. They were my Kung Fu and Tai Chi students. So I really was indoctrinated without being, or I was involved without being indoctrinated. Third level. The third level is where Buddhism starts. And it's called, and I've got an album, it's called Level 3 equals I Want You to Love Me. And that's it. So in other words, you got to rise past religion and realize I can be friends with every religion, and I can be friendly with every nationality, every race, and that's, I want you to love me. So you're taking in everybody and everything. And that's the beginning of Buddhism, because that's where Buddhism starts. Buddhism starts where most religions end. They get to that point where they're battling each other, and that's as far as they ever get. But the step above that is to accept everybody and love everybody. You get past the giving it a name and just call it compassion, humanity, love, generosity, charity. You don't have to be a member of a religion to do any of that. You can actually graduate past the religion and just become a spiritual person. That's level 3. Now, level 4 is a different story. That's the Kung Fu Cowboy series. And that's where, of course, I really relate to that. And that's where I'm out there trying to help everybody. And I'm teaching Tai Chi and Kung Fu and Zen Buddhism and Confucianism and Taoism and really just being a part of I was part of PTA, you know. I mean, of just being community oriented, okay, loving everybody. So that was level 3, and then level 4 is where you're doing something about it. So that's the Kung Fu Cowboy thing, you know. You're doing something about it. You're not just saying, "Oh, here, hi cows," you know. You're actually leading the cows somewhere. So anyway, that's Kung Fu Cowboy. It's helping people. Then level 5 was becoming a pipe carrier. Remember, I told you I didn't expect that. Becoming an actual medicine man, as most people call them, of the Lakota Sioux. And then the next one was I went back to the Pine Ridge Reservation and did my vision quest. Major journey. I mean, the most significant spiritual years of my entire life, from before or ever since. And okay, so that's level 6. And then level 7 was recorded, almost a decade later, and that was when I was homeless. And that's when you're basically you're homeless and non-materialistic. So that's where you're kind of like graduated beyond the aspirations and the desires and the passions of physical life, and you're just kind of coming to peace and harmony with as little as possible, and not needing or desiring as much, and being happy. 16 minutes. Let's see if I wrap it up. Okay, so level 7 is really being a monk, a happy monk. And, you know, being around and helping people and just, you know, being a bodhisattva is one of the ways they call it. They say you're ready to go to heaven, but you're going to stick around on earth and just help some people. So that's level 7. And that's what I was doing, level 7, helping lots of people. And then level 8, I didn't know what level 8 was. I just imagined somehow that was going to be a connection to the spiritual life. Presuming I'd gotten closer to a spiritual world, I should then be able to kind of like touch it. I should be so close I can touch it. And that's what level 8 is. And I woke up on Memorial Day 2014, and I had like, I should know this by heart. I'm going to work on that album, but I've had like 4 or 5 ghosts in my head. In fact, I was trying to figure it out the other day because a couple of songs were written by me. But I had one guy who was from the Vietnam War. Let's see, that's the song called Friendly Fire. Then I had another guy who was from World War II. That's called Bombs from God, because he was a bombardier. I've got another one, which was, anyway, these different songs. What was the other one? Anyway, we'll get to them. They weren't my songs. They were written by them. In fact, the real interesting part of that story was they sang those songs. The first take, I was trying to sing it, and they were kind of like trying to do their thing through me. I was kind of like just letting it happen. They did that, and then I was never able to record it again. So you're hearing the first take vocals on that album, and I've been dealing with it lately and realizing, man, I'm actually proud of this. And I'm even proud of them. I thought that their vocals were kind of half-rate because I was kind of like not really doing it myself. It's like, okay, you know, now I got to see what the melody is. But then I came back, and I couldn't do anything. It was done. The songs were done. A week later, I came back and tried to record the vocals over. You know, me do a good job on the vocals. Like, I'm just trying to imitate what those guys did, and I couldn't pull it off. So those are them singing through me, or my imagination. I'm willing to say it's my imagination. I'm a very creative person. If so, I think that I'm the most creative person I've ever known. I'll take credit for that. If we don't want to say there's any spiritual involvement. But anyway, that was level 8. As I had all these dead veterans, past deceased veterans, communicating through me on Memorial Day. That's why that level 8 equals Memorial Day album exists. I wrote a poem and 7 songs in 24 hours, and that's the album, 7 or 8 songs. And there's a song called War Sucks. I think that's definitely me. I think I definitely wrote that without anybody's help. But anyway, we'll get to that album soon enough. I want to, as I'm releasing these songs, that's going to be the American Zen story, though. So I'm going to have an American Zen podcast, and we'll talk about all those. 18 minutes. Remember, I'm trying to keep it to 15. So can I wrap up the American Zen experience? That's it. So I actually went through a spiritual journey, and now I'm anxious to share that journey with you guys because it wasn't anything I expected, and it was amazing. It was an amazing journey, and hopefully it'll inspire you like it's inspired me. Level 1's having a family. Level 2's having a religion. Level 3 is loving everyone. Level 4 is trying to help everyone. Level 5 is becoming a pipe carrier, which means that now you've dedicated your life to a certain spiritual aspiration. And then level 6 was actually connecting with the spiritual world, you know, in a give and take sense, you know, and also being a part of the tribe or whatever. A lot of things to this. And then level 7 is being a homeless monk and helping people. And then level 8 is touching the afterlife, which I did. So that's the American Zen journey, 8 albums, and I'm really anxious to everybody to be inspired by that. Okay, so there's the American Zen, and there's books written in poetry books from those times that tell the story. So in 20 minutes, I was able to maybe give an overview of American Zen on Shaolin Records exclusively.
Can you close the door to the kitchen? Okay, this song is, I don't know what the name of it is. Maybe Practicing Alone. Anyway, without a metronome because it speeds up a lot at the end.